You're listening to Season 14 of the Virtual Tailgate, a media bullcrap production covering college football in the Atlantic Coast Conference. I'm Andrew, and joining me tonight is David.
Hats off this week to the Duke Blue Devils defense, which leads the ACC and ranks second in the entire nation in tackles for loss on the season. Their current total, 34.0.
What are the odds?
They're even. It's even.
Also joining me tonight, we've got Geoff.
All right, well, those of you that have listened to the Virtual Tailgate for a while, we have come full circle here. A nominee for the 2024-2025 Pro Football Hall of Fame is none other than the namesake of the Defensive Player of the Year award on the Virtual Tailgate, aptly named for Luke Kuechly, who had an outstanding career at Boston College. Went on to have a very, very solid career, obviously being up for the Hall of Fame with the Carolina Panthers, including 2013 Defensive Player of the Year award. Ended up totaling over 1,000 tackles on his career, over 100 tackles every single season that he was in the league. No surprise there. Those of you that follow the Virtual Tailgate will know that that racking up the tackles was his MO. But you know this type of career really requires endurance. Endurance, kind of like the Tacova Stockton work boot, has a resolable Goodyear welt, whatever the heck that means. Treated leather and weatherproof seams add durability and comfort when working in the elements, much like Luke Kuechly did during his career. And a Vibram sole, like a traditional work boot, provides better traction and durability for all those cutting and chasing after those running backs and quarterbacks, like Luke Kuechly did during his career. Tacova's work boots, looking confident, feeling taller, and chasing and making tackles, obviously, for Luke Kuechly up for the Hall of Fame.
All right. And last but not least, we've got Jared.
The following parody service announcement is from the Virtual Tailgate. Drugs. They're awesome.
We were doing so well, guys. Like I really thought, I was like, this is the one somebody's going to be listening to this show and they're going to hear that Tacova's work boot spot and they're going to actually sign us on to pitch them.
Wait, sorry, Jared, you need to prep these things with us so that we can help out. Can you run that back one more time? You don't have to do the lead up. Just give us the PSA again. I've got the better cap.
How do you split that in parts? I don't even understand anymore.
No, he doesn't have to say the parody service announcement part. Just give me the rest of it. Just give me the read again, Jared.
The three words?
Yes, give me the read.
In the same tone.
Yep, go for it.
And we're still recording.
Yes, yeah.
Are you sure?
We're doing it live. Unfortunately.
Drugs. They're awesome.
Sorry, man. You needed to end it with a laugh. Be sure to join the tailgate on Facebook at Virtual Tailgate or email us at virtualtailgate@mediabullcrap.com. Geoff?
All right. Well, yeah, we're moving on. So there was football played last week, and there were some decent games on. So as every week, we've got our players of the week that we are going with, and I think we've done a pretty good job so far this season, guys. Spreading out the team, spreading out the players. Actually, probably doing more on both sides of the ball than we've done in the past. And Andrew, I'm going to throw it over to you to kick us off there with your player of the week.
Yeah, well, obviously there was nothing happening at all on the offensive side of the ball for SMU. No one's else is going to talk about that. Defense is where it's at. Safety for SMU, Ahmad Moses, 2 ints for 97 total return yards. One of those by itself, 60 yards and a touchdown. Great play on the defensive side of the ball for Ahmad Moses this week.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, I think SMU actually they really played a strong game on both sides of the ball. David, I think you might have somebody from the offensive side to go with Andrew's player of the week.
Well, yeah, I do want to point out that SMU, they put up 66 points in the battle for the Iron Skillet, victory over the TCU Horned Frogs. That 66 points was good for the third highest in any ACC game this weekend, which is quite a mark, you know. But I'm going to go with
Brishard, folks.
Brishard Smith, tailback for the Mustangs, who carried the ball 18 times for 127 yards and 3 scores, caught another touchdown through the air. 4 scores on the day for Brishard Smith, made the difference in this one, and earns him his first career virtual tailgate game ball.
All right, and Jared, who you have for this week? Non-SMU, but a great outstanding performance nonetheless.
Absolutely. I got Cam Ward, the quarterback from Miami, not related to Montgomery Ward, the RIP.
Well, that's fortunate.
Yeah, no kidding. Although he probably has some cash laying around, even with the bankruptcy and everything.
I don't know. I doubt there's any cash laying around for Montgomery Ward here. Just letting you know.
Yeah, but yeah.
Focus.
Maybe some close. I got it, Andrew. I got it. Okay, Cam Ward,
Squirrel
from Miami,
Squirrel.
The first ACC quarterback to throw for more than 300 yards and 3 touchdowns in the first 4 starts of his career in the last 25 years. Also, he had 404 passing yards and 3 touchdowns, along with a pick, but that doesn't matter. He was still a phenomenal player in the game against South Florida. He also thrown for 300 passing yards in all 4 games so far this season, and has recorded in his career 15,000 passing yards, making him the 13th player recognized by that feat for that feat by the NCAA. Whether that means anything. But
Jared, I was just going to say, I appreciate the way you shared that with us. You told us that he was the first ACC quarterback in a million years to throw for 300 yards or more in their first 4 games. And then you told us he's also thrown for 300 yards in all 4 games.
Yeah.
Man.
The only question I have is, how many yards has he thrown for in his first 4 games?
Not 34.
Well, David, I don't want to sit. I don't want to. I mean, far be it from me to defend Jared and his repetitiveness, but I mean, you speak for a living. I mean, probably out of all of us. I mean, how many times do you have to repeat yourself with every sermon in order to hope that at least a quarter of the congregation actually hears what you're talking about?
Point taken.
By the way, if I said 300 yards and 3 TDs, I meant 404 yards in the air and 3 TDs. So didn't misspeak on that one.
All right. Well, for our final game ball of the week, kind of sticking with the defensive side here this week. Mitch Lieber, Stanford defensive back. This was some Friday night ACC action as the Stanford Cardinal went up into the Northeast to take on the Syracuse Orange. Really a close game, a game in which Stanford came out on top 26-24, and that was really the difference maker was Mitch Lieber's 71-yard interception return for a TD in the third quarter of Stanford's victory over the 'Cuse. Really, Stanford or Syracuse was driving on that drive, and was probably at least gonna may have ended up punting, but probably gonna at least get a field goal out of that. Instead, they flipped the script. They end up throwing a pick 6 there that gives Stanford those 7 extra points that they wouldn't have otherwise had, and then really that makes the margin of victory for the Stanford Cardinal in this game 26-24 in a hard-fought game for the Stanford Cardinals. So, obviously exciting. It's good when you see a defensive play like that where you can say that it really made a difference in a close game, and it's always exciting to see the DBs get the pick 6, especially one that went for 71 yards. So good on Mitch for making the difference in that victory over the 'Cuse last Friday.
I, for one, am glad that none of us doubted the Cardinal in this one.
I'd just like to issue a correction or apologies to our sponsors. Geoff meant to call that Friday game Big Paction in the East, sponsored by Mutual of Omaha.
And David, I think I would like to remind you, and I'm pulling from the script from last week's episode. It says quickfire bets. Under your name, David, it says Syracuse -9 in the hook over Stanford. And here's the most important thing. In parentheses, it says bet the mortgage. David, how do you want to respond to that?
It's going to be difficult because I lost my house over there.
he's actually doing this show from the from his car right now.
Yeah, under our bridge too, probably. Oh,
Yeah,
jeez. Oh, goodness, David.
I've heard the car was good for that audio dampening. I thought his signal was coming through well.
Oh, there you go. Good point. Anyway, let's go to the power rankings here in the ACC. We have a lot of changes here, and especially at the 5 and 4 spot. New names, honestly, or a name we haven't heard in a while. Number 5, we have the Pitt Panthers. 4-0, not haven't yet played a conference game. Moved up 5 spots from where they were before. After their 73-17 win over Youngstown State, not necessarily a really impressive win per se, but Pitt has shown consistently they are at least able to play 4 quarters of at least somewhat competent football. And well, in this conference, that's good enough for being our top 5. At number 4, we have the Clemson Tigers moving up 4 spots in the power rankings after their 59-35 win over NC State. The Tigers moved up 4 spots, 2-1 overall so far this season, 1-0 in the conference. Number 3, we have Boston College moving up a spot after the 23-19 Michigan State win over Michigan State, a very good game. The Eagles are 3-1 and 1-0 in the conference. Number 2, or actually we have a tie for 1, actually. Reading this again, tie for 1, we have Miami and Louisville. Miami jumped up a spot to be tied for first with Louisville. The Canes are 4-0, still waiting to play their first conference game after their 50-15 win over South Florida. And Louisville 3-0, 1-0 in the conference after their 31-19 win over Georgia Tech, their first win in conference play. Bottom 3 now. Well, this is where things sound familiar, or they kind of just are what they are. At 15, we have Stanford, the Cardinal. Now, yes, we were just praising how a little bit earlier how they did really well against Syracuse, but we still have our doubts. 2-1, 1-0 in the conference after their first ACC win ever over the Orange, 26-24 at I can't even remember the damn name of the it's not Carrier Dome anymore, but whatever that is. We have a soundbite here, Andrew, you want to play, or is that just a wrong note?
That was from last week, but you blew past Boston College.
No, I didn't. I said 23-19.
Come on, you damn bird! Come and get me!
Making note. Play the damn bird sound. Noted for next week. Which I can't.
If you need some Gatorade, I don't know, like, you can have it.
Get some Gatorade, man. Enjoy your day.
What the hell? Number 16, we have the Seminoles.
Well, I mean, technically, doesn't that go to the number 17 teams since they didn't play last?
No, it's only if you hold your spot or go up one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Number 16, Florida State, with their first ACC win of the year being Cal, 14-9 in Tallahassee. The Seminoles are 1-3, with 1-2 in conference play. And at number 17, we have poor Wake Forest dropping a spot on their bye week because you know what, we just love to kick a guy down when we can. Wake Forest gets the FU award, and they get this nice little clip.
Rock says they kept you at the bottom of the barrel because you absolutely suck.
Honorable mention, of course, will go to North Carolina after their decision to allow 70-plus points to JMU at Chapel Hill this past Saturday. So congratulations for earning this little soundbite.
North Carolina fell 7 spots this week in our power ranking.
Yeah, you do that when you lose by 20. Fun fact, did you know North Carolina covered both teams covered the total individually? North Carolina, what was the other side right there? North Carolina scored like 7 touchdowns and yet still lost by 3 touchdowns or something like that. Just like, oh, you go over in the point total by yourself individually and yet you still lose by 3 scores. That's pretty impressive.
If JMU hadn't taken their foot off the accelerator, the combined score could have come close to that amazing Georgia Tech game from like the early 1900s.
I was praying for 100. I was watching it and I saw they got the 50 fairs. Like, they can do it. It's like, go. Don't stop.
All right, fellas, that's enough of this ancient history business. Let's look ahead because we've got some football action this weekend in the Atlantic Coast Conference. First up of the 3 games we're going to cover in depth here, Louisville Cardinals traveling to South Bend, visiting Touchdown Jesus, taking on the Fighting Irish of Notre Dame. This game opened with the Irish as a 9.5-point favorite. It looks to me like all of us are going to make some homer picks here. Looks like we've all got Louisville plus the points. What's going on here? Why are you guys so high on the Cardinals?
Because we're not high on Notre Dame football.
Because the spread has moved from anywhere to 6.5, or in some cases 4.5 for Notre Dame now, and everybody else is piling in on Louisville.
We're like the sharps on this one.
Well, I think that the fact that we're taking, as you said, David, you can say we're taking a homer pick by taking Louisville here, but none of us had the had the guts to actually take Louisville on the money line in this game, even with the line moving much closer in Notre Dame's favor. Because I think this is my personal impression is that this is a Louisville team that has obviously they're 3-0. They've worked their way up through the rankings. They're playing really good football on the offensive side of the ball. Defense has been pretty good at times. Definitely haven't given up any big games thus far. So I think it's a team that you can have confidence in, that they've got enough going for them. They're not going to get blown out in this game. And that's where I think the question comes in is this team stout enough to actually pull off that upset? I mean, we're talking that this is a game that they're going to actually have to go up to South Bend. So they're losing the home field. We obviously know that Notre Dame's going to be amped up for this game, being played at home. It's a top 25 matchup. So I think it's hard to have confidence that Louisville is the better team coming into this, but especially with a line opening at 9.5, it feels like this is a Louisville team, if for no other reason, that they can at least match Notre Dame score for score enough to keep it within that 9.5. Now, as Andrew was saying, you start to close that gap. If you were to bet on it today with what the current line is, that might be a different story.
Sounds like we all agree with that. The one thing I would add is this is a little bit of a test for the ACC here. I've come to believe that Clemson game versus Georgia opening weekend just didn't mean a whole lot. It tells us that the top of the SEC is a lot better than anybody in the ACC. We kind of knew that. But here you've got a Louisville team that we've got tied for first in our power rankings, undeniably a top 2 or 3 program in the league right now, on the road against another nationally ranked opponent. If Louisville could get the win here, that would bode well for the conference's reputation nationally. If they put up a stinker in this one, that is not going to be good for the ACC's chances of getting any at-large bid into the 12-team playoff.
Yeah. But is this a top 25 matchup if any other team in the country loses to NIU in their second game of the season? How is Notre Dame still hanging on to the number 16 slot? That's my problem with this game, is that I think Louisville deserves to be where they are right now in the rankings. It's not like they've played much of anyone, but they've beat the easy opponents handily. They held off a Georgia Tech team that surprised everyone at the beginning of the season. And meanwhile, Notre Dame, they've beat their expected opponents for the most part, but they've got that just stinker of an NIU game hanging out there that just gives you no confidence, or at least gives me no confidence in them going forward.
Hey, look, man, Riley Leonard finally threw a touchdown last weekend. First of the season. First in a Notre Dame uniform.
The longer that the transfer portal hangs on, the more we see that like a guy like Cam Ward is the exception that proves the rule, that the transfer portal people are the cast-offs. And Notre Dame has used 2 ACC cast-offs in 2 consecutive years. That does not bode well for what they're doing in terms of building a program. I think to compete at a national level, I think that they get a little bit more rope than they might have had otherwise with a 12-team playoff. But I think if we had continued to stick with just the top 4 being the way it was, that Notre Dame would have needed to make some big changes and soon. And I still feel like it's coming, but maybe they get a few more years before their fan base goes crazy.
Andrew, I do not know if this was intentional, but you've given us the greatest segue in virtual tailgate history to turn our attention to another place where a 1-year transfer portal quarterback might not be working out. And that is the Seminoles of Florida State, led by DJU, finally got on the board with a win. They held on at home to take down the Cal Bears. What was it, 14-9 on Saturday? Florida State that improved them on the season to 1-3. They are traveling to the Lone Star State, where they take on the Mustangs of SMU. It's an SMU team, again, that just put up nearly 70 points in a rivalry win over TCU. It looks to me like most of us see this going toward the home team. SMU's giving 5.5 points here. Jared, you are the most confident in the Mustangs. What do you see?
I still don't see a good Florida State team. I really don't. I think SMU at home has everything in their favor. At -5 on the hook, that's just a touchdown. I think they'll win by at least a touchdown. I wouldn't be surprised if they win by double digits. It's just Florida State's not good. And they have to travel now to Dallas. You think you're going to be like excited about it? They barely beat a Cal team that was like, many think it's not that great. And they struggled hard. And Cal would have won. Their kicker could have made all his field goals. So, color me skeptical regarding like Florida State doing anything like positive in terms of like covering lines or getting more wins later this year. I just don't see it. They're a bottom 3rd team. They're a bottom rung team of this conference. They've been exposed as what they are, and I think Southern Methodist will go ahead after putting up 66 points against the TCU. I think they're going to go ahead and put up at least 40 without a problem.
Yeah, I mean, I don't really disagree with you here that Florida State may really struggle with this SMU team. I think for me, the reason I find myself kind of hedging and taking the SMU money line is that SMU's defense is kind of atrocious. And this feels like a game that's going to be high scoring, a little bit of a shootout. I can imagine Florida State keeping that close enough or getting some garbage points late in the game, kind of a backdoor cover sort of situation. But I cannot go as far as seeing Florida State winning the game because they just haven't, despite the victory over Cal at home, I'm just not sure they've demonstrated that they're a good enough team to hang with a serious competitor over 4 quarters. And this to me feels like a game where Florida State can possibly keep it close. I just don't see a way they walk away with the win. So give me SMU on the money line.
Yeah, I think I don't know if I have a whole lot more to add. I know Andrew will pipe in with his pick, but I think your last statement was kind of where I landed. Maybe a little bit of a different path. Is that for this Florida State team, one thing that they haven't done this season, they've gotten outplayed for sure, but the defense overall has held it together for most of the season. I mean, yeah, there's been there's been the losses, but really it's the offensive side of the ball that hasn't gotten clicking. So I think that there is the danger that this game turns into a closer affair than the Mustangs really hope it will be, just because their defense, as you said, David, maybe it's the closest thing to a get right game to this Florida State offense is going to find right now, and I think this Florida State defense has the ability to keep this game close, and it could be a little bit of me just being too afraid, because 5.5 doesn't feel like a big number, but there's enough there that makes me worried that this game somehow ends up closer than it feels like it should be for the Mustangs.
All right, Andrew, you know what we've seen from Florida State this year.
Yep.
We've heard that your opinion of the Seminoles is not very high.
Yep.
You already told us that these transfer quarterbacks are not the answer.
Yep.
So tell us why we're wrong about how this game's going to go.
I mean, everything that you and Geoff said is exactly what I'm thinking. You guys just didn't go all the way and go for the higher money on picking the Florida State spread. I think that there is every chance with the defense that Florida State has when faced against stronger defense, SMU can be held down. The BYU game is an example of that. They only put up 15 points in that game. I just don't think that Florida State, finds a way to score enough points to overcome them necessarily. But I think this is absolutely a 3-point, 4-point game. This is a SMU drives down at the end and comes back for the victory, or Florida State gets some garbage time backdoor cover where they bring it within 3, but then they flub up the onside kick or something silly like that. So that's my bold prediction for this to be a close game, but for SMU to still come out on top.
I really like how Andrew, he really builds in scenarios. He says, I could see this as one of those where they pull within 3 but then flub the onside kill. He's not just walking us through what the score is going to be. He's walking us through exactly how the game is going to play out once they get to that point. So
we're just building up exactly all the terrible things that are going to happen to Mike Norvell to eventually have him dragging that Christmas tree out to the curb a couple of weeks.
I mean, at
what
some point that starts to get more and more real. I know there's all kinds of issues with the buyout and the big contract extension he got and all that, but at some point he's got to win some football games. And not that Florida State can afford to overlook anybody, but you do wonder if this is kind of a look ahead spot where after this SMU game, the Seminoles come into kind of a challenging stretch where they host Clemson. A couple weeks after that, they're on the road at Miami. A couple weeks after that, they're on the road at Notre Dame. There's some big games coming up, and if the Seminoles are not focused on trying to keep getting right to take care of business against SMU, this is an SMU team that can punish you. And so Mike Norvell needs to have his guys ready to go. They're also just at that point in the season where they've got to start accumulating wins, because I think a playoff run is probably out of the picture at this point. But they're looking at needing to make sure they get bowl eligible to make sure that this season is not a total disaster. And I don't know. It's going to be interesting. This may be, in some ways, the most intriguing matchup of the weekend, just for all the reasons that we've lifted up.
Here's my question, though, for the Christmas tree. What Christmas song is playing when they drag that tree out to the curb? What do y'all think? I mean, just a personal guess.
Hang on.
Feels like it's going to be Christmas Shoes.
That's a good one.
Oof. You know what it is? It's this one. That's
hard to beat.
That's sad Charlie Brown.
Yeah, copyright lawsuit we're gonna have to fight soon enough.
And
I personally
I've listened to podcasts for decades, man. It's not no problem.
I personally think it's Dominic the Donkey. Jimmy the Jig, hee-haw, it's Dominic the Donkey. The Italian Christmas donkey. Oh,
So you're you're going for
Andrew,
the absurdity.
you have to cut that out of the show for a sound bit. Just drop that in random places.
All right. Well, here's some news this weekend. It turns out rivalry week is coming early to Tobacco Road. Duke Blue Devils playing host to the North Carolina Tar Heels. We've already mentioned that North Carolina comes off an embarrassing defeat at the hands of JMU. Duke took care of business on the road against Middle Tennessee. Duke's sitting at 4-0. I don't know that they've had really much of a schedule to speak of, but they keep winning the games that are in front of them. North Carolina really looking to get back on the right side of things. This game opened at UNC minus 1.5. I believe the line has switched over now to Duke about -3. So the money is coming in on Duke, and the three of you like that. Tell me, what do you like about the Blue Devils in this one, or maybe what do you dislike about the Tar Heels?
Well, I don't think Duke is going to allow 70 points. I'm pretty confident of that.
I don't know if that was the question, though, Jared.
Well, that's the one thing I like better than UNC. I mean, what should we expect from UNC now? How are we supposed to proceed with betting on UNC football right now? Seriously, you allow 70 points to a Sun Belt team, and you just say, okay, well, UNC is still favored next week. Why? What did they earn to be favored next week? Going to Durham, playing for the victory belt in a rivalry game. Why should you put money on UNC to actually cover this? I think it's foolish. I don't think you should. I think you should probably run away to the other side. You should go ahead and put the money on Duke. And with this line that was open, provided by Andrew at the time of this podcast, Duke is actually getting more in return if you bet the money line on them. And that's what I'm doing. I think it's just a better investment, probably because it's on the better team.
I mean, I think that for me, this is, to me, this game, and I agree with you, David, it gets really hard for a lot of these teams, even when you're 3 and 4 games in, to know how teams stand because of their schedule. And to your point, Duke has not played the toughest schedule by far in to start the season. But as you said, they keep winning. UNC, on the other hand, we saw they're 3-1, was not an overall. They've had a couple of games that weren't overly impressive. Even before that JMU game, I mean the Colgate performance not overly impressive. The Minnesota game to start the season not all that great either. And to me, this game boils down. What I'm thinking about in this game is I'm thinking about that sophomore quarterback Malik Murphy at Duke right now. He's having an incredibly strong start to the season. This is a UNC secondary that it feels like for about the last decade that has been their Achilles heel. It is still their Achilles heel right now. And I don't know what kind of points UNC puts up, but I think that Malik Murphy has a huge day against this Tar Heel secondary. And if nothing else, that covers that puts Duke on the winning side of this game. However it falls out, I don't know how many points are going to be scored. I'm assuming the over/under is pretty high in this one. But I think that's the key to this game is his performance.
Has UNC? It looks like UNC may have finally settled on their quarterback. They definitely look like they were playing by committee earlier in the season before this game.
Well, we know how that goes, right? We all love quarterbacks by committee. That's the winning. Well, that's the
it wasn't even 2. Like there definitely have been 3 quarterbacks who've gotten like reasonable time for UNC so far this season. Criswell didn't seem to really start playing until last week. He got like 1 attempt in the Colgate game. So like maybe they're figuring something out with him. I am. But like, I don't know, that it seems like there's a lot of questions with UNC here, and maybe you should always assume UNC is going to score 45 points and can you keep up with them or not? But wasn't there a Wasn't there a 45-48 game that they lost last year? It's just I don't trust them at all to actually be able to hold on and do anything. So that's what's pulling me towards the Duke side in this one. It's just complete lack of trust in you. Yes. In fact, it was they won 47-45 in double overtime against Duke last year. So yeah,
Well,
I don't
if
trust
you will-
UNC.
If you will permit me, I want to explain why you're all wrong about this. And it has to do with the great Mac Brown. Mac, after that 70-50 butt whooping that they took a week ago to JMU, Mac was prepared to get himself a Gatorade and enjoy his day. And he told the team just that he would ride off into the sunset. He was disappointed. He was embarrassed. This loss was on him. He was ready to call it a career, but his players would not let him. They still believe in Coach Mack. They want him there. They're going to win this one for the Macker on Saturday. You're going to see an inspired North Carolina football team. And they're going up against a Duke team that I think you guys are a little bit too high on. I hear what you're saying about Malik Murphy seeming to be the answer at quarterback for the Blue Devils. But I want to point out that before this victory over Middle Tennessee, Duke had scored exactly 26 points in each of their first three contests. And I get it that North Carolina's defense is nothing to write home about, but neither is Elon's or UConn's. And yet we've seen that Duke has struggled to get on the board in big ways. I think this North Carolina offense that managed to put up 50 against JMU, they're not going anywhere. I'm not sure that I see Duke keeping up with them. I like North Carolina. I'll give the 1.5 that was where the original line was. I think the Tar Heels get the victory in this one.
That North Carolina offense put up 21 against JMU, and then they put up the rest of those points against the guys from the stands that JMU let play in the second half. Okay.
21 might be enough against Duke.
You said they scored 26 in two of their last contests. Come on. The numbers are against
three
you.
of them, but yeah, still. Give me the Tar Heels. You guys are gonna be eating a lot of crow next week.
Yeah, you said that last week about Syracuse covering and bet the mortgage on that one. And well, you're saying that from your car under the bridge right now.
I did finish ahead of Jared last week.
That's great. I still have.
Oh yeah. Speaking of which, can we get a check-in on how everybody's doing on that?
We don't have time.
I'd be really interested to hear how things are going.
I want to run on to the quickfire bets though, and make sure that we let David go with the most audacious quickfire bet first.
Here we go. This is the easiest bet I've ever made in my life. I'm going to take the Miami Hurricanes. Somehow this game opened as a 6.5 point spread. It immediately jumped up to something like 18 or 18 in the hook. If you can find Miami minus 6.5 anywhere, take it immediately. Hurricanes are going to win this one handily and easily over a struggling Virginia Tech Hokies team.
Yeah, so for my pick, I'm gonna take it's a big line, but I'm taking Clemson. Not gonna say I'm riding high on them or anything, but I'm gonna take them with the minus 22.5 against the Stanford Cardinal. I think there's something about that offense that has gotten at least a little bit righted, the last couple of weeks after that embarrassing start to the season against Georgia, where they only put up 3 points. So. I think this is an offense that can put up some points when given the opportunity. I'm still a little bit skeptical on this Stanford team. I know they came up with the win against Syracuse last week thanks to that pick six, but a little bit skeptical on their ability to hang with a team like Clemson that can put up points. So I'm going to take a bit of a flyer here, but I'm taking Clemson in the minus 22.
Louisiana is going down to Wake Forest to play a game I'm assuming Wake Forest is compensating them for. And honestly, I think it's a good thing for them because they're going to get paid to win. Wake Forest is struggling mightily bad right now. Louisiana has played tough in their games against Tulane, who is the same team that played tough against Kansas State and Oklahoma, albeit both of them have lost recently, but they're both much better teams. it's fair to think that Louisiana can go ahead and take care of business against Wake Forest. I say take Louisiana in the plus 124 money line.
Right, and I am taking Boston College to cover their spread against the Western Kentucky Hilltoppers. I think Boston College has played well so far this season in most of their games, and I think an 11-point spread against a nothing team is a pretty easy one to do. As a side note, guys, I use the Vegas Insider opening lines as our opening because that was the only thing that was available the first time we started doing this last year. Just doing a compare and contrast with the opening lines to ESPN, I legitimately think that the Vegas guys forgot to put a 1 in their opening line for the Miami game because ESPN has it negative 16.5 as an opener. But
I'm
I'm
fantastic.
true to my word, I'm going to use the data source that I'm going to use, and so we get to bet on it at negative 6.5.
That's awesome. I'll say this, and this is dangerous, but I feel really good about our picks, boys.
Oh boy.
I think the fact that we have such clarity, we're almost in consensus about all these games. I think you can take it to the bank.
Yeah, that's going to be
I will bet Jared's mortgage
a subtotal negative 2,000 on this one. So that is it for the virtual tailgate. You can send your questions or comments to virtualtailgate@mediabullcrap.com.
And always remember these 3 rules: never get less than 12 hours sleep.
Never play cards with a guy who has the same first name as the city.
And never get involved with a woman with a tattoo of a dagger on her body.
Stick to that. And everything else is cream cheese.
That's ball game.
Usually Jared has a rejoinder.
I don't know. I was waiting for Andrew.